Helps if I turn the microphone on, I guess. I call to order the Bethany City Council meeting for Tuesday, July 18th, 2017. Would you please rise for tonight's prayer, which will be led by Councilmember Paul Todd, and then please remain standing as Vice Mayor Jeff Knapp introduces our guest who will lead us in the flag salute.
Heavenly Father, we come before you in the name of Jesus. We humbly ask that you continually pour out your grace and mercy upon us. Pray especially tonight that you'll give us wisdom, guidance, and direction. And we humbly ask that you bless this city. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to introduce Jacob Berg. Jacob is an Eagle Scout, earned that rank with Boy Scout Troop 553. He's lived in Bethany all of his life. He graduated from Putnam City West last May, just a couple of months ago, where he was a member of both the marching and the jazz bands. He was a member of Tri-M, which is the Music National Honor Society. He's also in the National Honor Society academically, was named a super senior at PC West, passing all EOI exams. He earned the District AP Scholar Award. He also serves with the Youth Trumpet and Taps Corps, which among other events plays taps at military funerals. Jacob plans to study pre-physical therapy at Oklahoma City Community College this fall. Thank you, Jacob, for being here, and take it away.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Item number 1 tonight is the consent docket, items A through F. Do I have a motion and/or discussion?
I move we approve.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Please cast your votes. Item number 2 is the presentation of service awards by Mike Moxley, 35 years, and Jose Avila, 15 years.
It looks like the gentlemen were not able to be in attendance tonight, so I'll just repeat what the mayor mentioned. We'd like to congratulate and thank the services of Jose Avila, who has served our city faithfully for 15 years, as well as Mike Moxley, who has served our city for 20 years. So 35 years. That is amazing, 35 years. So thanks to both of those gentlemen for their service.
Fantastic. Item number 3 is a public hearing item. Approval of ordinance number 1938, rezoning property located at 2208 North Alexander from CG Commercial General to R1 Single Family. This is a approval of ordinance. I'm reading by title only. Do we have any kind of discussion or any questions? Okay. Is there anybody that would like to speak about this?
Is there going to be a presentation?
I do not know.
I will move approval.
Yeah, by reading. By title
The
only.
first item would be A, which is reading by title only. Need a motion for that.
We have a second? Okay. We cast our votes. Please cast your votes.
Is this for reading of title only?
Yes.
Okay.
An ordinance amending the zoning ordinances and map of the city of Bethany, Oklahoma by including an R1 single-family use district, the property described as Lot 3, Block 1, Don Brown's Western Oaks, 3rd edition in Bethany, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma, as more particularly described hereinafter, and declaring an emergency. This ordinance has one enacting section and then a separate section 2, which is the emergency clause. I believe staff has a staff report on this as well.
Mr. Caton, would you like to provide the report, please?
I would be happy to give an introduction to Ms. Danielle Barker, our Community Development Specialist. She has prepared the staff report, did a wonderful job at P&Z. So Danielle will be happy to go over it. She has a presentation, answer any questions. I'm here also to speak to anything that might come up as we go. So Danielle, if you would.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I first want to start off by telling you that the copy of the aerial map that you have of the zoning map actually has the wrong property that's highlighted. I didn't catch it before it went out, so it's actually a property south of that. My apologies for that. I was also going to let you know and then remind you guys that this is just a rezoning case. We will be looking at, should this rezoning be approved, we will then go start the site plan process, and they will have to go through the entire site plan they'll be required to follow that site plan ordinance. Okay, so some of the property details. It's currently zone CG. They're requesting an R1 zoning. They're requesting this because they are looking to expand the church, and they cannot do that the way it is right now because of the zoning. With the church being an R1 listed use specifically, it is not allowable use within CG. Therefore, it's technically a legal nonconforming use the way it sits right now. So they are not allowed to expand or intensify the use. The surrounding zonings is R1 and RM on to the west, and then CG just to the north. The lot size is just right out an acre, a little bit over. The existing structure is a church. The proposed structure is just an additional sanctuary to that church. The property does meet or exceeds applicable lot design standards for R1 zoning. This means that the lot size, lot area, lot width, and lot depth. There is an existing water line, 8 inches along Alexander, and the existing sanitary sewer is along the south side of Don Brown Park. And the paving is a 2-lane residential, of course, being Alexander. The ordinance for R1 zoning for the creation of districts calls for single-family dwellings and related recreational, religious, and educational facilities, normally required to provide an orderly and attractive residential area. So hence why there's a specifically allowable use for the R1 zoning. Here's the correct zoning map for the correct highlighted area. It is kind of an odd-shaped lot, and it's right to the south of the Western Oaks Tower. Here's kind of an aerial kind of showing you the surrounding area. To the west is the Western Oaks Apartments. To the north is a couple businesses and the Apollo, or the Pinto Horse Association, and then to the east is the Western Oaks Schools. The comprehensive plan does call for this area to be a 23rd Street mixed-use corridor. The comp plan also states that this is kind of a long-term venture. As we were seeing last night with the mayor, we're looking for revitalization of this area as well. Within the mixed use, there's for this particular district, they are looking at residential uses and commercial uses being mixed use together. So it does make sense to have kind of those two mixed within each other. The long-term goals for the 23rd Street corridor is to have kind of a missing middle type of homes where you have kind of your commercial on the bottom and your residential on top. However, this is kind of a very long-range plan for that area. And to start off with, we'll have to have a creation of districts and decide exactly where that boundary is going to be for the 23rd Street corridor. We have kind of a rough map right now of where that could be, but we don't have anything concrete within the ordinances stating that that's going to be the 23rd Street corridor, and then also looking at what mixed use is going to be for that particular area as well. So that's something. There's a few things that we have to look at as far as within the comp plan. As I said, the long-range character does talk about having a designated mixed-use district. It talks about having amend the current zoning ordinances to allow for mixed use, to allow commercial and residential uses together. It also discusses encouraging startup and incubator businesses to kind of get some activity on 23rd Street again, whereas right now there's a lot of vacant retail establishments, things like that. Here's kind of a map of the comprehensive plan that shows the mixed-use corridor being all along 23rd Street. And this is the targeted district map again, showing kind of the existing land uses and kind of what that looks like currently within that district. That's pretty much. Oh wait, I'm sorry. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. They did recommend approval of the rezoning from CG to R1. This is contingent upon having a 5-foot sidewalk that's in place within a timely fashion from the north and south boundary of the property. And this is also noted that there wasn't any consideration of the proposed floor plan that was within your packets as well. There was no letters of protest received and no phone calls. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
I do have a couple of questions. So my understanding then is that the lot in question is Lot 3.
Yes.
And then Lot 1 and Lot 2 will continue to be CG?
Yes, that is correct.
And so Lot 2 is the one that's owned by Southwest Christian?
Yes, that is the
University.
Western Oaks Tower, correct.
And it is currently for sale?
I have heard that, but I don't have any confirmation of that, but I have heard that it was for sale.
Is there any reason, since you're doing an expansion for the church, that you would not also want to acquire Lot 2 and have that for expansion and for parking? It seems like there's still going to be a shortage of parking and that it's going to be a fairly tight lot for an additional 5,000 square feet and 53 cars, if I read it right.
Right, yeah, that's, to my knowledge, and the applicant can probably speak better to that, but to my knowledge, they did not want to acquire that property. They wanted to be able to have everything within the current property that they own. And they will have to follow through with the parking requirements that's required within the ordinance as well. And so there's lots of things that are kind of, I don't want to call them stumbling blocks, but they're kind of things that they're going to have to overcome, challenges more or less, that they're going to have to overcome before they can even get a site plan approved. And parking is definitely going to be one of those.
So if someone would purchase Lot 2 and build up to the lot lines, is there enough room for the construction of the additional 5,000 square feet and the additional parking on Lot 3?
That will all have to be addressed once we get the official site plan, because we have kind of a floor plan, if you will, of what they would like to see, but we don't have anything official that show like where the lot boundaries currently are, what the distance is of the buildings, and things like that. So that's something that will have to be fully addressed within the site.
So for now, they're just asking for this one lot, which is a strange lot,
Right.
to be zoned as R1, but it abuts a park,
Yes. The park
which
is directly to the
presumably
south.
would not be changed.
No, that's correct.
Thank you.
Question. Where's the pinhole? Is that the Pinto Association on 1?
Yes, lot 1, yes.
And 2 is the existing structure now?
Yeah, lot 2 is the Western Oaks Tower, and then lot 3 is the church.
Okay.
Right, it has a couple parking lots, and it includes the Western Oaks Tower as well. And then there's a weird road that is also kind of on both lots, believe it or not.
I just think before anybody spends any money, if they increase another 3,000 to 5,000, they're gonna have to increase their parking by 1.5. And it looks like they're gonna plan on using the Western Oaks Tower, I would assume, as their parking.
They
But-
didn't, sorry.
But tonight's meeting is strictly for rezoning. We will be able to discuss parking at another time, correct?
That's correct. Depending on when they get the site plan in, with some of the zoning, the ordinance changes that's going on, either you guys will be hearing it, or they will have to follow it, and if they want to file appeal, it will go through BOA.
The reason I ask is because of if we have 2 conflicting possible projects or 3, the rezone, 23rd being redone, the Western Oaks Tower being redone, and this project going, and we add 3,000 square feet, possibly with a high capacity, I'm guessing if it's a church, they could have a need for a lot more parking. And if there's not enough room to park in Western Oaks, it could possibly, that's why I said I think we need to look at the parking before we do anything and make sure there is enough parking for everybody.
However, as I understand, the issue now is that they can't submit a plan without rezoning to R1.
That's correct.
Because churches are not allowed in CG.
That's correct.
Okay.
Even if they don't add on, it's good for us to rezone this and get it appropriately zoned, even if the addition doesn't work out
Right.
for whatever reason.
If it is rezoned, are you going to have any conflicts in the future related to the development of the commercial property in the area?
I wouldn't see a reason that there would be any conflicts.
For example, if there was a restaurant on the 6th floor of that tower and it served alcohol,
Right.
would there be a conflict with the presence of the church in the same area?
There could be with the ABLE Act, obviously, but that's regardless. Even now, there would be a conflict anyways with the church currently being there. The only way there wouldn't be a conflict, regardless of rezoning or not, is if that church wasn't there. So regardless, just based on the use itself, there's going to be a conflict.
So there would be a conflict, and a future developer could look at that as a plausible reason to eliminate purchase of this property because they couldn't obtain a liquor license to have a restaurant or to do any other type of commercial activity.
If they chose to have where they wanted to choose liquor to have a liquor license, then it could cause a potential issue depending upon how the state looked at it as far as the height and all that. But
I
most
think I
likely,
can
yes.
clarify that issue for you too. The ABC board, which regulates the issuance of liquor by the drink licenses, their position is if the amount of alcohol sales is not greater than 50% of their total sales, that does not apply. So it could, a location of a church could impact a bar, for instance, but not a restaurant because typically the alcohol sales are not 50% of their revenue. And an example of that would be the Asian restaurant down on 39th Street. That's how they were able to do that. And that's the position that the ABC board's taken for several years.
And the church is there and the restaurant is not.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there is one other issue with Bethany's Title 11, but there's already R1 zoning abutting that lot anyway with the school. So this zoning would not make any difference in that regard. But our Title 11 prohibits alcohol sales on a lot that abuts residential zoning. So it's already that way with the school to the east. So this wouldn't have any effect on that.
I want to make sure I understand it. Is that correct that by rezoning this, it brings it into compliance with the new comprehensive plan?
It would bring it into compliance with the current ordinances the way they're written right now. As far as within there's not really any issues from my standpoint as being a planner, looking at it and seeing a mixed use and having a residential use within a mixed use that's allowing for residential and commercial mixed use. I don't see any issues with that.
But potentially, just because I've seen the parking studies, it could also completely prohibit some expansions for Western Oaks Tower. It could prohibit that.
It would depend upon the amount of parking, because if the Western Oaks already has a decent sized parking lot the way it is now. So my guess is based on when it was built back in the 70s, it probably complied with the current ordinances. But again, we're kind of looking at, we don't know what's going to happen with Western Oaks Tower in any time in the near future. So right now we're just kind of looking at the zoning, and then we can figure out the parking when we.
It's just been practiced that we have so little commercial general and Bethany, 5 square miles, and so little frontage on that to protect it
Right.
at all costs, pretty much.
Right, you're right. And with that church, I mean, it's been there since the late 90s, and they have stated many times that they have no intention of leaving at all, and they would like to remain within Bethany. So I think it's not gonna. It's already zoned commercial, but it's kind of in non-compliance the way it is right now.
So I have a question. rezoning puts it into compliance with where we are now.
Correct.
Not necessarily with the comprehensive plan. But we do have a group coming in to rewrite a lot of our code to meet our comprehensive plan. And so what if that gets rewritten and now we're just wasting our time flipping back and forth? I mean, what problems do you see there? Because this group is coming to help us
Right.
be able to do our comprehensive plan.
Right. Again, it's kind of one of those things where we don't have a defined district yet, so it would depend upon where that line would actually wind up being, where they may sit there and say, well, Western Oaks Tower looks like a good place to cut off for a mixed-use district. And again, it's with being a district that's allowing for residential and commercial uses, you're going to inevitably have a church that's allowed within residential anyways. Most cities, I've talked with a few cities in the metro and that have mixed uses, and they allow churches within their mixed use areas, even along that's near major thoroughfares as well. So there's several down in Norman that's that way. Oklahoma City has a few as well. So I think it's going to be one of those things that it's going to be allowable use regardless.
Maybe I could kind of crystallize what I perceive as a little bit of a concern. So let's say that the tower is part of the area that is within the district that is looked at for this new overlay that's being contemplated. So if it's within it, is it possible then for, if we do decide that, okay, churches are allowed in these mixed-use areas, but we also have business in these mixed-use areas. We also have a restaurant. We have a restaurant that sells alcohol, whether it's above or below 50%. Can all that be addressed within the code rewrite?
Yep.
So can you confirm that?
I would, if I was doing it, I would demand that be addressed in the code rewrite, that those sorts of things should be addressed. And if you're going to, you must define not only where the mixed-use district is, but what it is. You need to make sure that that's all in that rewrite. And I think this is a classic example of how we're going to have to figure out how to integrate all these different uses into these overlay districts.
So if I could follow up with this, so even if we still, well, today we're at a state of imperfection because it's a non-conforming use. By changing it, we're still in a state of imperfection as far as the future, what we're looking to do with the comp plan, with the rewrite Title 15 and possibly Title 11. It still could be corrected in the long run with that effort.
Yes.
So thank you.
Regarding the parking issue, your ordinance says that a church has to meet certain parking requirements. And when they submit the site plan, if the building is too large and doesn't have enough parking to accommodate the size, it won't be approved.
Right.
Yep.
They have to have
So
one
they'd have
space
to
per
reduce
4
the
seats
size
in the
of the building
sanctuary.
or
It's as simple as
something.
that.
So
Yeah.
that's really not a zoning issue, as someone stated.
This particular area was rezoned, or this church came in for rezoning in 1999. And the city of Bethany gave them a permit to build a church on this property. And our zoning ordinances have not changed since that time in this particular application. So I'm sitting here thinking that this was rezoned to R1 in 1999, but we cannot find where it was. But we did issue them a permit to do it, and you had to have a permit for building a church in this particular area, and it was inspected, but we don't have the paperwork to show that it was properly rezoned. And I would say, since the council here does that, we should say that the rezoning is our problem, the people sitting right up here. And the area that is there is fine. It's just that we're just trying to straighten up a
faux pas that we made in 1999. And I will admit that, it's incumbent on the people that are building the building to check all of these things to make sure that the city does them. And that's the only fault that I see, is they didn't check it. And the city should have done it to start with. But the only thing I can see wrong here, this particular piece of property is not served by a sanitary sewer. And it's going to have to go across a park to get to a sanitary sewer if they submit a drawing to buy a permit for the other building. But if they do not do that and go along like they are, everything is, we're just straightening up a mess.
Correct. We're based on the research that we did when they first, because they first came in, was wanting and explaining that they wanted to submit a site plan to be able to expand their church. So we started looking into it, and the first issue that we found, obviously, was the fact that they were zoned commercial general. And so we did a little further research trying to figure out exactly what happened. Why is a church allowed to build within a commercial general area? And we did a search of the planning and zoning database in the city, the BOA database, and nothing was found within that database. So we did a search of site plans. We did find an old site plan from back in the late 90s that shows the church and all that. It wasn't the approved site plan, so we can only assume that most likely that there was a building permit issued and that the process was followed, but we don't have any paperwork or anything.
We don't have any paperwork on it.
That's correct.
But I was sitting right here in this seat when this particular area was rezoned R1. And I'm also saying that the church should have checked us and we should have checked it ourselves. So, it's kind of a flip of the coin and we go on down the road.
So, Mr. Shirey, is that a motion to approve to correct our
No,
faux
that's not a
pas?
motion. I don't.
Well, I have one more additional point. I mean, don't we have a meeting July 19th with IBTS concerning land development and the code update process? That's set for Wednesday, and this is a interesting topic to discuss, and I think that we should present that to them as a part of their presentation to get some feedback to understand what would be the best solution and for all parties in this situation. So with that in mind, I would like to make a motion to table this particular item related to the approval of ordinance number 1938 to an additional time to allow further investigation and a better understanding of how we can solve this problem.
But we have a building permit that's been issued for this on what the city did in 1999. And as far as I'm concerned, there's been a twofold mistake. First off, we didn't do our job right. Secondly, the people that built the building down there didn't do their job right. They should have checked it. One of our great presidents says, verify before you step. Okay, so, you need to verify these things, but I sat right here and I didn't like the zoning the first time through either because it was so close to these houses that are backed up to it and it was by a green belt. But it met all of the criteria that was necessary for them to zone that R1.
Well, Mr. Shirey, I agree with you, and also agree with our resident barrister over here. But it won't hurt anything to listen to what this company is coming in and see what even a CBD overlay will do to that too. It might have a big effect, it might not. I agree. I'd like to say I'll second.
If we don't change it, they're just going to sue us to change it
Hey,
because
man,
they were in
You
the
know what?
right.
You
I
shouldn't
definitely
have
will
said
second
that.
it.
They shouldn't have said that
I
word.
second your motion.
Because,
We're just
Reserve
tabling the
Bethany is
motion.
what they'll do.
Then they
And
built it
because
right.
We're not
they-
denying
they've got
it,
all
we're
the
just
grounds in the
tabling it.
world to sue us in because we didn't do our job and they didn't do their job.
And the threat of being sued is not a good way to do business anyways. I get
let's
sued
know
every-
about you.
I second.
Fix it.
My intent by making the motion was strictly to determine what all available options would be available for all parties.
Absolutely.
It's not
If we go back to
necessarily,
1999 and go by what happened in 1999, we wouldn't even be setting up here.
well, I appreciate that, Councilman Shirey, but I think I would like to understand all available options in this situation and rely on the expertise of people who have probably addressed this very issue. And we can find solutions for all parties. That's the
Absolutely.
idea.
I have a motion and I do have a second.
We're just tabling it until we get more information, Mr. Shirey.
I think we're going to vote on it first.
I
They
am,
get a motion in a second.
yeah, I'd like
table
to
it.
speak to this before we vote. I don't think we're going to learn enough tomorrow night to make a decision that affects this. And it sounds as if it's our mistake, or at least part of it is. And I really believe that since the comp plan calls for the 23rd Street corridor to be multicultural and inclusive and all of those things that I'm really excited about, I encourage voting down the tabling and let us go forward with this ordinance.
On that motion, I would suggest, because this was an advertised public hearing, that you establish a date for the tabling, and I think your next meeting is, I believe, August 1st. Is that right?
I believe the participants in this are here. Would this bother you to wait that long? I mean, don't, because I think you're right. And, you know, if you want to go ahead and build your building, I think we should step aside and let you build your building.
Would you like to step to the microphone?
They might also want to know what's going to be next to them possibly too, if we're redoing our zoning for the city.
Would this bother your situation if it was tabled
Well, it'd be
until our next?
handy to get it done. We have an existing condition. That's, church is there. It's built, it's done, they occupy it. This is correcting, a situation that exists. It's the reality right now. A long-range plan is not a reality. It's speculating on what might be, what could be, what possibly be. And you don't want to cut off any kind of possibilities that might exist. But in this case, we're not really doing anything. The church, we've got to go through, as Steve pointed out, a great deal more complicated maneuvers here with you guys in order to get any kind of development done on that side. So it is just what exists. We're asking you to approve what exists retroactively back to 1999. Just say that this is our one because it is a church and it is on this side. It has nothing to do with parking, nothing to do with building a new building. It's there.
Yes, I'm completely lost now. It has nothing to do with building a new building or anything in the future. You
We
just want it
can-
corrected, but you asked for another 5,000 square foot building. You just contradicted yourself.
No, I'm not asking for any kind of construction or site plan approval at this point. As Steve has pointed out to me, we have a lot of hurdles to jump before we can even make application for a building permit to add on to the building. We have to meet all the ordinances, all of them, including the sewer line, which I wasn't aware of. And again, Steve informs me of all these issues, and it sounds less and less positive. But we're at this moment asking only that you look at what exists and do something retroactive to prove the existing building as R1. It is de facto R1. It is already there. And I don't know how to argue that, well, you could just not zone it and then prevent them from ever being able to build something on. But at this point, there are other obstacles. This is,
If I could, once again, you're not mentioning your new purchase whatsoever in here. This is just the old property.
the old property, that's it. That's all we're dealing with here, the rezoning of what's
I guess
there.
I'm not reading this right there. I'm missing something. I thought that you were including the new property.
No, we're not. There is no new
5,000 square
property.
foot.
Apologize
There
for
is
that.
no new property, they already own all that lot.
All you're asking us to do is right a wrong that I feel both of us are responsible for.
Correct a situation that is currently incorrect. We can't even go forward with an application to add on or to make any kind of improvements on that property without this zoning being corrected, being made R1. So we're in a spot.
Hold on just a second. This is y'all's handwriting. We're requesting a change in zoning from CD to R1, which will allow us, the church, to add on to the existing blah, 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 blah. That's what you just said.
I
Is
was
not correct.
poorly informed when I wrote that.
Well, I think it needs to be
become-
resubmitted.
At this point, it is true. I can tell you that our intention is to add on, but there's no possibility of our even applying for an addition or any kind of
This
improvements.
is the application for amendment of the comprehensive plan for the city of Bethany.
So back to my original question,
Yes.
though. Knowing that our next council meeting is in 2 weeks, does postponing this, tabling this for 2 weeks so we can, like Councilman Palmer requested, to be able to research this and ask some questions with the people that we do have coming in doing some ordinance work, does that completely mess up anything with this church at this point?
Not really. No.
Because, I mean, it has gone on since 1999, I've learned. And
No
so
urgency.
a couple, 2 weeks.
Yes.
A couple weeks probably isn't going to kill anybody. So
We're not trying to stop the correction. We just need to get some more facts, a little more information.
I understand you, sure.
because I do have a motion and a second to table it. So
That would be till August 1st.
till August 1st. So we need to vote on that first. Are you the pastor of the church? No, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I was pointing at him. I'm sorry.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm the only one member with the church.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So this vote is to table this until we can do some more, have some more questions answered and look into this a little further until August 1st, our next council meeting. So to table this, please cast your votes.
It didn't pass.
No, that failed.
Now, I would like to make a motion that we accept this as how the Planning and Zoning Committee presented it to us, which meant that we change it, they put a 5-foot sidewalk in front of it, the city manager will pressure that to go ahead. And I understand, you may have a lot more money than we do, but you're going to have to start working to raise funds to this, and you can't do that with a halfway deal.
I second your motion.
Okay, before we still have the public hearing item on this. So is there anybody that has anything they would like to say in favor of or opposed to?
Gilbert Carlson, 2601 North Rockwell. I chaired this meeting at PNC, and let me make a suggestion. This is a convoluted presentation because, as the gentleman said, he was misinformed when he started out. We are looking at this time at the zoning issue only. As Mr. Shire says, this was a mistake on the part of the city going back to 1999. It is correcting that deficiency. And while I respect Mr. Palmer's thought process, I would disagree with him on his logic because we need to correct this deficiency. Take it to IBTS or whoever it may be and ask them how they would have handled it. But don't make these people wait any longer. They have agreed to address a portion of our comprehensive plan's intentions of expanding a sidewalk, but don't keep them in limbo. That is not business friendly.
Now may I second his motion?
Does anybody from the church wish to speak or say anything else to add to that?
Good evening, all. My name is Ajesh Kurim. I am one of my church member from this church, and we are a small family, around 25 members, and we were thinking to build a Sunday school building initially, and what we thought, even if we can convert the current structure into the Sunday school buildings, rooms, something like that, and make a new nice building for the church purpose. So that's why we applied to city for the we approached the city to build a new building. So they said it's required rezoning. So that's our only concern right now. Just to make a plan, we need to create a change to the zoning. So we request you all to, we like to stay in Bethany. We like the area. We purchased a lot of stuff from stores, gas stations everywhere. So city also getting some money from there too, and it's good to know that we need to change the zoning to a residential. It's a God place, God's residence. So anyway, so we like to request you all to approve this application. That's all we need to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, what was your name again? I'm sorry.
Ajesh Kurian.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody here that would like to address this that is opposed to this? Okay, then I close the public hearing.
I would like to say, I'm encouraged that you guys do want to add on and build. As we've been talking, Bethany is open for business. We want expansion, churches included, businesses, churches. And this is right off of 23rd Street, a lot south. This is a great place for a church. It's a great additional buffer for that neighborhood. That park's only 35 foot wide. I'm sure these homes are going to appreciate that stays a church. That would be mine. And anyway, and I thank you for wanting to add on and be here in Bethany.
Do I have a motion for approval of Section 1 of Ordinance Number 1938?
I made a motion.
You motioned. Dr. Harris seconded. Please cast your votes.
That did pass. And the next item is Section 2, which is the emergency clause. And you would need a separate motion to adopt the
I'd like
emergency
a
clause.
second motion for the emergency clause, please.
Do I have a second?
Was that a motion, Phil?
A motion,
Yes, it was a motion for emergency clause.
I'll second it. I didn't know I could do that. I think they've waited since 1999. Why? Phil motion. Yes. Mr. Shirey motioned. I seconded because I don't think they should wait another, 30 days? Is that what it is?
Have to wait 30 days.
You don't have to wait 30 days for the emergency clause.
Okay. Please cast your votes.
And that did pass.
Item 4, approval of resolution number 1449, providing procedures for connection of water and sewer service lines for structures served by existing substandard water and sewer connections. Do I have a motion?
We will, yes, sir.
Motion and discussion.
Let's get a report first.
I'll
'cause
be
I've
glad
got
to
some
report back
questions.
that Mr. Caton is more up to speed than I am on it. I know what it says, but I think he can tell you why it occurred and why it's on the agenda.
Well, if you'll remember back on May 16th, this body codified a longstanding policy about private sewer and water services having to, if you're going to put a service in, it has to have a public main, either adjacent or abutting to the lot being served. I think that's a great codification of a longstanding policy that's a good policy. Shortly after that, a citizen in a meeting helped us understand that there are several older existing structures, especially in the older parts of town, that were put in with private services crossing property lines, which would not be in compliance with our current ordinance. The problem would come about if someone wanted to tear down an older substandard house and build a nice new one. Would they then have to expend a main, which would make the project economically unviable? So this is a good compromise between something that might render the project impossible and still trying to at least come up with a way to protect any future owners to know that it would still be served by substandard utilities without absolutely killing the deal. So this this resolution would allow, if someone tears an old house down with a substandard service connection, they would be allowed to continue using those substandard service connections as long as they filed an acknowledgement and notice agreement in the office of the county clerk, so that any potential buyer in the future could do a simple title search, and this would show up, and they would be aware that it has a substandard utility service, and the city of Bethany is not going to have to be responsible for correcting the deficiency that was done many, many years ago. Mr. Davis drafted the resolution and the notice agreement as well, so it looks like that would be a good way to handle those few. I don't know how many there are. There might be 50, there might be 100, I don't know. We run across them occasionally, that they run across someone else's yard and they were put in a long, long time ago, and without, I'm sure the people that own it now didn't even know it when they bought the house. This would somewhat address that. So that's in a nutshell what this is about.
How this really comes to light is one of these homes that Mr. Caton describes has a sewer failure.
Yes.
And then they call the plumber, and the plumber comes out, and it turns out that the failure is in two lots down the street. And so their backyard has to be dug up, and they won't let anybody in their fence to dig up the backyard. And that's a real example I just gave you. And that really puts everyone in a quandary, and of course, they always want the city to fix it at that point. And this at least gives people notice, if they're buying a house like that it's their responsibility, and that's the whole purpose of this.
This would only give notice if they tore down the house and built a new house.
That is correct.
So the ones that are still like that, they still will not know.
There's no mechanism that I'm aware of. We don't even know where
But when
they
they
are.
build a
Yeah.
new house, we were told when we passed this last time, for water, for instance, the city is responsible from the water main to the water meter. So
Correct.
if you are building a new home and that water meter is not on your property, wouldn't the city move it to your property, and wouldn't that be the city's responsibility?
No, if there's already I'm not aware of any water services, to be honest. I take that back. I'm aware of one water service that is that way, but the meter is still at the main, way over here, and then the service runs. So the city's responsibility still ends at the meter, which is near the main. No, we would
Under
not
this
move it.
proposal, they're going to have to connect to the existing
Right.
service line. If they have to construct a new line, it's going to have to go
Right.
to sewer.
Yeah. Any new services have to be hooked to a public main.
So,
Have to.
clarify, this is more or less a hold harmless for the city,
It
or,
is.
or hold less harmless.
It is, and to prevent some unscrupulous seller from selling something to a buyer who doesn't know that exists and not telling them about it.
But we're still going to allow people to build new homes, and still they could have their sewer going across two other lots.
If it currently is that way, they will be allowed to continue to use it, yes.
So the problem doesn't ever get fixed.
The plumbing is still the way it was.
Building a new home would be the time to fix that.
And that, the engineer in me agrees with you, Mr. Herron, that it's time to fix that. But we're talking about $100 a linear foot for a main extension. You have to hire engineers, get DEQ permits, construction contracts, council approval. It's a very, very daunting task for someone who just wants to build a house.
Because we don't have main sewer lines everywhere.
That's correct.
The rationale was that perhaps this would encourage people to tear down some of the older dilapidated homes and build new structures there. Whereas if they had to spend $10,000 on a sewer line, it might not be feasible to do that.
Or maybe the city needs to be paying to extend the sewer lines to all residents. So they have a sewer, I mean, my sewer goes out straight to the street and taps in. So, I mean, we have a number of streets that don't have that
In
option.
the older parts of town that were developed before our current subdivision regulations, there are, not a lot, but there are lots.
And that's, we're correcting
that
one
don't
right now,
have-
right?
That's correct. We are correcting one right now. In the newer parts, the ones that have been developed since the late 50s, early 60s, all of the current regulations were in place, and every lot that got platted has a water and sewer main adjacent to it. But these are the older parts or the unplatted parts of town.
I'd rather see us as a city moving forward to help rectify that and have sewer at everyone's property lines rather than allowing them to still cut across 2-3 lots. I think we need to be moving towards fixing this problem so it's not a problem anymore in the future. Because there is some, there's some other lots north of the school that still have some sewer issues because they still tie together on a private main, I guess.
Again, we have lots of unplatted areas that are served by private on-site sewer septic system. So it's not unusual to have a lot not served by public main, but it's a little bit unusual to have a private service cutting across someone else's yard and they don't even know it. And that is a bad situation.
36th and 30th Street is a perfect example of the unplatted areas where there's not a lot of sewer, and some of them probably aren't even sewerable.
Right.
Without lift stations and lots
Correct.
of things because of elevations and so on.
Right.
Wilburn, Alexander, some of those streets have those kind of problems north of 30th Street. And that's all because that area was developed when it was in the county.
Right.
And the city annexed it, and a lot of the houses were already there on septic tanks and water wells.
We develop piecemeal, and that's why we have 9 lift stations instead of just 3 like a normal city would. It just developed that way, and now we have to deal with it.
Steve, this doesn't, if we sell somebody a property and they want to just hook into the old private mains type where it crosses 2 or 3 yards, we can't create an easement. You still have to get the cooperation of your neighbors if you have to fix it, I guess, later.
Well, again, these are all private property issues. I mean, if you want to make it legal and get an easement, that would be between the owners of the property. The city really wouldn't have a dog in that hunt as far as private property issue, because it's a private sewer main and it's private property and a private easement. They do exist, but we don't encourage them because of all the problems David was talking about. 3 buyers from now, nobody's going to know about these easements or anything else. They just know somebody's digging up my backyard, and that causes problems.
I have known of instances where neighbors got in a dispute and the neighbor went out and dug up and cut the sewer line.
Yeah.
And that's a real example too. So, all kinds of things can happen. But, if I were buying a house that had this kind of an arrangement, before I paid for it, I would make sure I had an easement from my neighbor that let me dig in their yard. That's what, any...
David's absolutely right. This is a compromise. You're right, it's not a great situation, but it at least makes it possible for someone to perhaps tear down an old dilapidated house in a desirable part of town and maybe build a new one, whereas they might not have been able to because of cost. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but they might not. It might be a deal killer because of cost, and this is kind of a compromise, and at least the potential buyers, you just won't have somebody come in and flip something and spring it on them when they find out later. At least they'll know that it's this way.
So our goal here is to have fewer dilapidated houses with substandard utilities and more nicer, bigger houses with substandard utilities.
Mr.
I
Kigney,
think everyone in here would love to have a big enough checkbook to fix all of these problems. I know I would. I'd have a job for the next 15 years designing all these sewer lines. But sometimes, the short-term practicalities have to come in, and this was offered as a...
This little one-block project we're looking at up in North Bethany now is north of $100,000,
Yes.
I understand. So,
Right.
Well, and
it's not cheap.
For practical purposes, that is the end game, to the extent that the city will go through and construct sewer lines to
Yes.
allow these residents to get into the
Right.
sewer main. But for purposes of now, this is a alternative, although substandard, but it does serve a purpose
Right.
to allow further development, to allow the city to catch up with its sewer services and sewer mains, especially in Ward 2 in my neighborhood. Because I don't foresee the city coming up with hundreds of thousands of dollars next year to fix all of these problems within a reasonable time frame. It's a long-term project that has to be set up, funded, and implemented by the city. And if we don't do that now, we are hindering the growth of the neighborhood, but allowing people to come in and understand the situation. Is that a fair statement?
It is exactly that. It's a good compromise to tackle the current situation. The city has spent a lot of money, especially in the older parts of town, upgrading water and sewer lines. Since I've been here, I've seen a lot of water and sewer go in the ground to upgrade from substandard. We kind of had to shift gears to big projects as we were having big problems in our sewer systems. But hopefully we can use our CDBG grant money and things like that to get back into doing these smaller type projects. But again, that's going to be a year's type time scale.
So we're not eliminating that possibility. We're just finding a practical
absolutely.
solution.
Yeah, that's still the goal, I believe, of everyone in here would be to water and sewer every lot in Bethany.
But is there a way to incentivize both the buyer, builder, and the city to meet halfway on a project? Or does it mean you have to go all the way down, a major street in order to get to a house that's going to be a new house? I mean,
the current law, the current regulation, I could even interpret some state regulations that say if you're going to make a new tap, it has to be into a public main. And if there's no public main there, the only alternative to this would be somebody has to pay to extend that main. Hopefully it'll even be possible, because if the existing main's not deep enough, it may not even possible to sewer it that way.
so how frequent are the mains? Are they every block,
in a normal platted area, the mains are adjacent to every lot. They run by every lot. In the old parts of town, we literally had people selling their backyards to somebody else,
Right,
and so
but
the
that
main
was central.
isolating.
Yeah.
So there is no main, and to get one there could be.
But if we're not talking about Central, is it an issue? Other places in that area?
There's up north of the school. There are a few houses there. I think there's an unplatted area over by Wheeler, I believe, that has a bunch of lots that have been cut up that may have that problem. I'm not certain on that. But again, there aren't that many properties, but they do exist, and when they show up, it's usually some really mad people that want the city to do something about it. So.
If those
Holloway
areas,
Street right over here, right just west of us,
30th.
they've got a lot of problems back over there too, and a lot of those crisscross connections
Yeah.
over there too.
well,
JD, you had something you wanted to say.
Oh, I was just going to tag on. I appreciate Steve making the presentation. And when we plan for these, we never know which way the conversation might go. And Steve, I don't know if any of you have ever taken an opposite point of view and then argued for that point of view, but I kind of suspicion Steve might be somewhere in that dark area in some of this. He came to me and was very concerned about some of this, and I appreciate him doing a good workmanlike job on articulating our attempt. We have been challenged to try to be creative and have creative solutions to difficult problems that have been here for a very long time. And this is a swipe at doing that.
We just got one question slash comment. This is great for the buyer that wants to bulldoze a house and build another one. But we're not we almost need to let the people know we're not guaranteeing from that lot to the main what those people are going to allow or not allow those people to do. Almost needs to be pointed out, though, that even though the city doesn't mind, your next door neighbor might, and the next door neighbor might, and the next door neighbor might. And there are neighborhoods like that nobody knows about all over Bethany.
And I would think that might affect your getting a mortgage or whatever if
Right.
that was against it. I would see that as a real detrimental thing to a buyer.
I think ultimately it brings to the process fixing the sewer line connection. If you are a potential buyer and the seller has to disclose that, then that's part of the process to purchase the home. The price could be varied because of the problems with the sewer line, which could ultimately lead to an easement or could lead to a solution to the problem on the private level as opposed to the city level. So, I mean, that's one factor that you should consider to vote in favor of this. The other factor is the city's identified those areas. We know exactly where we need to work, and we are working on Central, and we will identify other areas in the future to fix the problem. So it's vital in Ward 2 to develop our neighborhood so that we can provide affordable housing for our residents, especially in Ward 2, to allow them to enjoy the benefits of living in the city of Bethany. And this accomplishes that. It's not a perfect solution, but it's feasible, and it's definitely in the right direction. So is it a end-all, be-all? No. Will it lead to improvement? Yes. And I think that's why I'm going to vote in favor for this ordinance.
Do I have a motion for approval of Resolution 1449?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 5, approval of resolution number 1451, authorizing purchase agreement for IT backup and disaster recovery project.
We're not going back to that, are we, guys?
No.
Okay.
This, do I have a staff report?
Yes, Resolution 1451 has been proposed and put before you. This is a part of our ongoing and continued IT improvements, information technology improvements in our organization. You might recall a few months back, you all approved an agreement with ImageNet. Within the scope of that agreement, where a number of things were identified, a lot of those things that are spelled out in the narrative that have been done have continued to be worked on. One of the most crucial, if not the most crucial thing that we have in place is a disaster recovery system. And currently our old backup system is just that. It's old and it's failing many times. It doesn't even run. And the ability for us to be able to back up and keep whole our data is very important. And also our ability in the event were we to have a major disaster here, for us to be able to restore a site at another location would be, again, crucial for us to resume operations and service to our community. And this project, as is indicated in the narrative, includes a number of hardware items as well as the programming that will go along with it, provided by ImageNet.
I would like to know how the process works, because we don't bid this out. I know we approved the IT company. So my concern would be that when we sent out for an IT company and got bids for that, they lowball us to get the city's business, and then they come in when they start selling products, then they jack up the price to make up the difference on their low ball. So was this bid out, or is there a mechanism to where we can get bids? I know computer stuff's is expensive, but $27,000 for a cloud backup seems like a lot of money. So is there a mechanism to where we can bid this out to where, I know this company is identifying the problems and we're paying for that service with our current agreement, but then some of these softwares and backups, could we get additional bids on that?
I guess to directly answer your question, yes, I mean, anything is feasible. I would worry a little bit about the complexity of that, with it being another company that would actually be coming in and doing the servicing of it and programming it, but yet then it's ImageNet that has to maintain and run the programming. I wish I would have brought my whole file with me. Do you, put you on the spot, and I apologize, Steve. Do you happen to recall off the top of your head? I'm thinking this 26.9 is very, very much in line with what was previously identified when we originally talked with them as far as the cost for this.
I don't
Well, and
remember.
much of this is labor too, and other things. I mean, the equipment is 11 something, right?
That's right.
Well, the equipment also includes 2 devices, one in the court and one here. It's not just cloud. And then there's the cloud service plus the installation and the management of it. I mean, you wouldn't want one company coming in and doing the setup and getting it ready and the programming and everything like that, and then going, okay, we're done. And having another company have to come in and try to figure out where they left off, what they did, what the settings are. I mean, that process, we've been with them for just over a year now, and they're just now getting it all sorted out from before. And, you know, this is something that the backup for right here for City Hall does not work. We have no backup right now. If our system goes down, we get to go back for wherever the last paper copy was, I'm guessing the first of the month, and we start doing the paper receipts and with the copying machine and try to get it figured out. I mean, that's how critical we are right now. And we don't want to have to wait for a company to figure out how to do that if something goes bad.
Well,
So,
I can appreciate that. I think that the price of the hardware is reasonable, but the concern is that we had a contract with ImageNet, and now they're asking for additional money to service this project. Why can't this line item be within that contract?
well, that was part of the contract, was that the everyday maintenance, the things to take care of, the equipment that we have right now is part of the contract. But the additional, the setup of equipment is additional. That was a part of the contract. And, you know, we talk about the costs of, you know, how do we know that they're competitive? Well, we know they're competitive because they won't be here next year if they're not. And I mean, that's how we know that they are going to remain competitive, because if we get the feeling that they're not being competitive, we'll go out for bids again. And, you know, we know that they're being competitive right now.
With some of this, so I mean, yeah, so the initial contract is competitive, but I mean, do we double check any of their other prices throughout the year to ensure that they're competitive?
I did not double check this, and our IT guy is on vacation right now. I'm sorry, but I'm sure that he did. But we have checked other equipment before, like the Wi-Fi in this building, and it was very within reason. And as you said, it's out of this world with speed. I mean, it's fantastic equipment. It's not the equipment you go down here to Best Buy and buy. This is equipment that you buy, that professionals buy and install. And but no, I did not check these particular pieces of equipment out.
This is an insurance policy
This is the
and
best we can
absolutely
get.
necessary
Yes.
for a business like we operate. I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
How many bids did we get?
This was the sole source.
I'm kind of with him, because I mean, I back up 10 computers at several locations. I mean, I don't know what service there is. I mean, I just can't think. The service comes if you have a crash and they have to recover the data if you can't do it yourself.
Well, I think the service comes before you have the crash.
They just install it.
Well, they install it and they keep it going, and they can, I mean, we've got like 4 servers that connect to it from 2 buildings. The actual backups are going to cross between the 2 buildings. They're actually live, I mean, to where when something happens, it's backed up like that. So that if we go down right now, they go, okay, everybody step back. Okay, we're live again. And, you know, if the system goes down completely, as in a server goes down, they bring in the new server, they fire it back up, and half a day, we're back up exactly where we were, and we go back to buying or selling water. I mean, it's that fast, and that's why that's the difference right there. If we had a tornado come through and take this out, they bring in the new servers we need with some laptops and give it time to load up, and we're back at whatever's left of the window, and we're back taking care of business. That's the disaster part.
I have a motion and a second for approval of Resolution 1451. Please cast your votes. Item 6, approval of resolution number 1448, creating a branding and logo task force, establishing methods of appointment of members to the board, providing for function of board. And I believe, JD, you have a report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So a while back, as it was indicated in the narrative, on March 21st, you all approved the appointment of 15 members to the Branding and Logo Task Force. This task force, along with several other task forces and boards, have been doing a great job. However, with this one, with 15 members, it's been difficult at times for them all to come at the same time. And in fact, they were unable to actually have enough for a quorum the meeting before last, and they were really close at a couple of the other meetings. And so they asked me if it could be, if the context of their board, their task force, could be revamped so that it wasn't as difficult for them to acquire a quorum. And so with that, we discussed possibly, kind of like in baseball, you put players on waivers kind of a thing, but this isn't quite to that extent. But it would be where, as David drew up the resolution, it gives the city manager the authority to appoint the 11 regular members, and then the other 4 members then would be alternates. And in every case of all of our meetings, if everybody who showed up, everybody would have been voting because we had enough alternates that would have been there. And during that discussion at the last meeting, we even had some of the members volunteer, hey, I'll be an alternate, because as they all discussed, they're still going to take everybody's thoughts into consideration. As I said before, and I'll repeat again, they are doing a great job. They're a very inclusive group, and they're wishing feedback and input, but this will allow them to be able to meet quorum a little bit easier.
Do we have any attendance requirements in the appointing of these groups? If there's somebody that never shows up, do we just keep them on and they mess up the quorum?
At present, we don't have a rule that, like for example, if they make up a number 5 meetings in a row, that they're automatically dismissed. That is something that you all could take up at some point if you wish to do. But at this point, we have had a couple. In fact, I believe in a little while we'll have, or actually it was already done. We had the appointment of a vacancy that we had on a board, and we have received another resignation from someone that's just not going to be able to obtain. So typically what happens is that the chairman of whichever task force, or possibly me, will talk to the individual that's unable to attend and see, if they're intend on attending. And so to answer your question, no, not currently.
But maybe 15 is just too big a board. And I think those numbers were rather arbitrary based upon how many people applied.
Right.
So we could look at reducing the number on the board to 12 or 10 or some other number.
I think that's exactly what this is doing.
The resolution will reset the main board number to 11, so that'll make the new quorum be 6.
So the alternates might find it easier to resign than to be on standby.
If they wish to, but based upon the conversation the other night, this would free them up. They're not tied to have to come, but they could attend when they're able to.
I'd make a motion to approve Resolution 1448.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 7 is approval of the collective bargaining agreement for the FOP. And item 8 is the approval of the collective bargaining for the IAFF. Do I have a motion to go into executive session for items 7 and 8?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Do we need to back up? Did I take it away too soon? So item 7 is the approval for the collective bargaining agreement for the FOP, Lodge 161. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 8 is approval for the collective bargaining agreement for the IAFF. Do I have a motion to table?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your votes.
I think we should explain that this was because it could not be delivered today as necessary.
Yes.
Doesn't mean anything
No major
bad about
drama.
it.
Item 9 is a call to the public. Do we have anybody that would like to address the council? If so, you have 3 minutes. Item 10 is the city attorney's report.
All my items were listed on the agenda.
Item 11 is the city manager's report.
Okay, good evening. Try that again. Good evening, everyone. Just a few updates for you this evening. First of all, on the area of code enforcement, I have new numbers for you. As of today, 726 total notices of violations have been issued. Of those, there remain 112 that are still open. 613 have been closed. We have 5 that are non-compliant and are moving toward abatement at this time. So we continue, I think, to make great strides as far as that's concerned. Water, our ability to pump water and to keep water in our water towers will remain something that we watch during the summer. I just wanted to report to you that we're doing very well so far, despite the very hot temperatures and dry weather, with the exception of that one rain just the other day. We are in the 90 percentile for all of our towers, 95, 96% across the board report I received just today. So good news as far as that's concerned. We have a very busy schedule right now, and I wanted just to reiterate, I think it was mentioned already this evening, that we have a presentation by IBTS, company we're looking at potentially to do our Title 15 rewrite. We'll be doing a presentation in this very room tomorrow night, and it's a joint meeting with our Board of Adjustment, with our Planning and Zoning Committee, with the Steering Committee, and as well as you good folks as well. So we're looking forward to that. That's at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. We also will have a special call meeting for awarding the library bid. I believe Dr. Harris maybe will have a little update for you on that. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the meeting, all of our new initiatives are launched and going. Cemetery, Arts and Culture, Parks, Trees and Rec, Branding and Logo, all have been continuing to meet and do a great job. Our new Economic Development Authority is scheduled to meet on July 20th, a little bit later this week. And so looking forward to getting them launched, again, July 20th at noon. And then Recycling Committee, I think that we need to redouble our efforts to get the word out that we are recruiting for that committee. And if you all know of folks that might be interested, please let them know. We had originally intended to have appointments before you for your consideration at the August 1 meeting. But at this point, I'm not sure we're going to have enough for that. So if you know folks that are interested, please let them not be shy in letting us know. And I think with that, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12 is the council members' announcements, and I think, with all due respect, I would like to start tonight. If that's weird, I'm sorry. But the time has come around that doesn't come around very often, and I'm, for one, not comfortable signing anything until I get a little more education. And so far, the OG&E franchise agreement that comes around every 25 years, it's a 25-year franchise agreement, seems to be no negotiation whatsoever on anything that we talk about. I met with Pat Lewis. I like Pat Lewis. He's a great guy. However, I think the agreement that OG&E presents to us, I just question, is this the best we can do? And I'm asking that the city staff continue to do some research to see what options do we have, because I believe, and I know we were all elected here up here on the horseshoe to look after the interest for our citizens. And I just want to make sure before we sign anything or agree to anything that that is the best thing. And if it's not, then we pursue other options. If it comes back and it is, then I have no problem signing that. But right now, I don't have that information. And so I, for one, am asking that the city staff would dig in and do their due diligence, and let's really see what's out there for us. Because to be quite blunt, to me it seems there's just no negotiation whatsoever, and it feels like a legalized monopoly, and I don't really like that. So with that being said, that's where I stand on that, and that's kind of where we're at with the OG&E franchise agreement right now. Mr. Palmer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had a great event this past week in my neighborhood. It's called Big Trash Pickup. And I was able to put some abstract art up in my yard, if you saw that on Facebook. It was inventive, and hopefully it draws some awareness to the issue of that this is a great service. And I even took a selfie with two of the coworkers that were picking up my sectional that just happened to be in my front yard. They did a great job and a great attitude, and I hope the residents appreciate that. It's a good service that has not been provided. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Dr. Harris?
I have exciting news. The library project, the bids were open this past week, and they all came in below our estimate, which made us ecstatic. So we had originally planned on phase one being especially the library and then the basics on the rest of the project. And then seeing if we had money for phase two, which would go into the parks and playground equipment and public art and that sort of thing. Well, now there's enough money to do plan phase one and phase two. And so we can complete the library complex project and be under budget if all goes well. So we will be awarding that bid on the 25th, 26th, somewhere in there, next week. Anyhow, we are now going to break ground. So Saturday, August 12th will be groundbreaking. And our theme is We Dig Our New Library, and we are inviting everyone to come and dig. So we'll have 20 shovels and lines of people who get their photos taken, helping to dig. And the most exciting part is the kids are invited to bring their digging toys and they will have their own special area. They'll get hard hats, and they can dig dirt and help build their new library. And we're just excited about the whole thing. And Kent Faust, who is a native Bethanian, is going to, that is the right word, is going to sing, and there will be no speeches. It's very informal. And I'm saying 150 people will show up. And that may be my number, whether anybody counts or not. So, that's how we do it. I was a pastor's wife. I know how to count. And so, anyhow, I'm excited about the library plans. And 2 days after the groundbreaking, the demolition of the old library will start or will happen. And there's going to be a webcam on the police station, so at any time you can log in and see what's going on with the construction. It's fun.
Fantastic. Mr. Todd?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm like you. I'm terribly concerned about a 25-year tied in there. The idea of not having the opportunity to negotiate, this is what you get. Like it or not, this is what you get. I just resist that with a great deal of fervor. And so I encourage us to take a long, hard look at this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hard time signing my 2-year cell phone agreement. 25 years is a long time. Mr. Moore?
I agree with both of y'all. I would treat it just like the facts, just the facts. We need some information first. We need to know, number one, legally, do we have a choice? We need to know if we have a choice to do our own thing or at least explore our own thing. Is 25 years a legislative thing? If it's not, if it's a company issue, then that's negotiable. Everything's negotiable unless it's a law. If it's not, five-year agreement won't kill them. We find out it's not feasible. This next time it comes around, we'll go 25 years if they want to. But I agree with you. Everything's negotiable. So stay after them.
Thank you. Mr. Herron?
Thank you. I would like to suggest that we possibly have a workshop September, October for the 4th of July Freedom Celebration. I think the parade went very well, but there was some disappointment in the evening activities or lack of. So I would like to see if we could visit that in plenty of time, maybe a joint with the council and future committee that's trying to take that over. And just to make sure that we are all on the same page, that we're going to get from the committee what we are expecting or what we have envisioned to happen during that. So we can see how that. And also one other question. You had mentioned we're doing well with water so far this summer. I would like to have a follow-up if we are moving forward with preparing for our new well field. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Shirey?
Thank you, sir. I see that the code people have presented us with 700 code violations or thereabout. But I have 2 areas in my ward that I'm very concerned about. One of them is Old Orchard townhouses. I've been by there 3 to 4 times in the last 2 weeks, and there doesn't appear to be anything taking place. And there's doors off, there's windows broken, and as the old saying goes, you got the broken window promotes another broken window. And I would like to see that we take vigorous action on Old Orchard townhouses, that we go in and do a complete inspection, if we can, to make sure that they are habitable. Because you start looking at the uninhabitable ones that you can see, and you're absolutely astonished that people would be living down in that particular area. And then we have another thing that I'm a little bit upset about, is at 2200 North Flamingo, we had a court-ordered removal of those buildings. And they did knock them down to the floors, but the floors in those buildings are part of the building. And they need to take them out, because if you go down there and look at it, the grass has grown up, the trees are out of hand, and it is going to be part of our redevelopment area that we start on 23rd Street. It's a pretty good sized piece of property, and it would be I think we need to start on that so that we can get a jump start on replacing what's down there. And this zoning issue that we had tonight, is something that if we don't show people that we're interested in them, and it was purely and simply the fault of the city of Bethany that it didn't get done, we have to be proactive in allowing those people to do what they need to do to their building. I wasn't for it the first time it went through. I thought it was too close to the housing down there, but it's been down 17 years, and we had no one protested it, and you would probably never know. They're just going to have to go in and make an application for a building permit and allow our planning and zoning, or not our planning and zoning, but our planning and zoning and the development people here, community development people here, to do their job and to do it well. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy about the library bids coming in as well. I plan to be there. I don't think I have any more Tonka trucks, but I hope that some children bring some. And the hard hats are a good touch, too. I've been to several of the boards and committees and task forces. Haven't been to all of those, but I've been to several of those meetings, and usually hearing JD's lengthy report about all of the things going on. Tonight was short and sweet, I would say. But there's just a lot of irons in the fire right now. A lot of big projects, big things that are going on. I went to the OMAG conference a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that was suggested there, and I think it's a good idea, and I don't know, maybe the city has done this in the past, is just some council guidelines. I know we all go to OML's training for new elected officials. We get a booklet there that doesn't cover a lot of information. I think there's a section in there about this, but just about making public comments, public announcements, so on and so forth, beyond the mandates of what the state statutes and our ordinances demand. Part of my job, on my day job, is to connect with the media. I know how a newsroom works. We have a public information officer on staff, and she connects with the media on a regular basis. Council sets policy. We don't need to micromanage what staff does. But maybe some of these rules could help us avoid things like conflicts of interest, misrepresentation in the media, possibly causing a developer to reconsider a project, surprises, things like that. I know that we all have the best interests of Bethany with us. We might have some differing opinions what the end goal is. and how we might get there. But I'll just ask if staff would look into maybe something that's been in the past, maybe look at OML documentation, what they do there. Maybe even, despite what's happened in the last couple of years, how the legislature sets their protocols and how announcements are made and so on and so forth. So we can just continue to be seen working as a team and just maintain this positive momentum we have going right now. I did go to the meeting last night, and real positive, good turnout, quite surprising turnout. Beautiful view on the 6th floor of that building. But that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. JD?
I thought maybe I would circle back on a couple of things that was brought up a little bit earlier. Councilmember Shirey, we will certainly follow up on the items that you brought up. And in fact, one of those that we have been working on is the one you mentioned about the foundation on Flamingo. And we've received word from the owners. Our code enforcement folks have been in contact with them. They've actually indicated a willingness to have the concrete removed. So the devil's in the details on that, but hopefully that will come to fruition, and that will be a very nice development there. So we'll follow up on that. I do have Councilmember Palmer a quick little additional update on Big Trash, if that's all right. And I think that has been moving along very, very well. In fact, David Buchanan told me just a little while ago that they anticipate wrapping up tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday, so they have really, they're getting good at this. And then the last thing I just failed to mention earlier, and that is we're continuing to also work on succession planning. We haven't been talking a lot about that, but that may impact in all sorts of different areas, and I just wanted to kind of give you a little heads up that that's still, we are doing that. We're working on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13 is new business. Does anybody have any new business? I actually have something I'd like to mention in new business, and it goes right along with Mr. Herron, what you were talking about, the Freedom Festival, the daytime in Eldon Lyon Park, part of the 4th of July, not the parade, not the fireworks, but the daytime thing. There were, and you could probably answer this better than me, there were several phone calls and emails that came in. There were quite a few people that were not happy with the daytime thing, but I believe staff would have to back me up that the majority of those were people that don't live in Bethany. But I wanted to say this so it's on the record that I am glad to shoulder the whole Freedom Festival thing, the daytime deal, because I sat right here and said, trust me, we want to get a committee. We're going to see what they can do to take it over to alleviate the city staff and everything so that our staff can be beautifying the city and doing other things that they need to be doing, not spending so much time on a one-day event. And you guys voted and we went that direction. It did not turn out the way that any of us would have hoped. However, I will say that I think it's in the perfect position now because the citizens really want this. If the citizens really want the daytime thing in Eldon Lyon Park, then the citizens need to step up and form this committee, which I would like to be a nonprofit organization that is separated from the city so that they could go out and raise the funds that they want to put this thing on. They could make it $100,000 day event and make it amazing. Nobody wants to see it go away. I want to see it better, but I believe our city staff needs to be doing the things that we have been doing and they have been doing up to this point. And so I have no problem taking full responsibility of it, but I do believe it's going to be better than it's ever been because we actually have one of our P&Z members, Justin Peck, that came to me, and he wants to lead this committee, hopefully turning it into a nonprofit. And so I'm asking for any citizens out there that you care about the Eldon Lyon daytime portion of the Freedom Festival, then step forward. There's applications here at City Hall, and get on board and make this thing better than it's ever been. And I'm totally pleased with where we are right now because they have an entire year to really get going. But I do agree with you that maybe we should call a meeting with the council and with those that interested parties to be on that committee. So that's all I have to
At
say.
an early enough stage so we can direct it as needed. And actually, I want to point out something else. A lot of the comments I heard and that I thought were actually the evening activities, not necessarily the daytime. So more specifically, lack of music, lack of food stands, and it didn't feel like the fireworks show was as it was in the past. So more evening activities.
Yeah, I don't know about the fireworks, but
yeah, that's more what
it was
what I heard.
$1,000 a minute, just like it's always been. So yeah, but no, we can. And I will say this, that this committee, one of the things I'll bring up, because I made a note of this, and so I'm going to mention this. I got an email from a 10-year-old little girl that was not happy about the animal display prizes at the carnival. And so I will be suggesting probably to this committee that maybe they need to ask the carnival owners that not be part of the prizes, the real animals. And so, and little Kaylee, I promised her that I would do everything that I could to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm going to do that. So.
And maybe we need to make it the City Council's Freedom Festival, and we organize it, and we volunteer and work it too. So there's an idea.
You can join the committee, for sure.
I have been out there the last 2 years working.
I drove a lot of people to their cars.
Justin Peck is going to head this committee, and he will take anybody that wants to be a part of this thing, for sure.
For the record, I'd be more than happy to volunteer.
With no more new business, I consider us adjourned until August 1st, 2017. I call to order the Bethany Public Works Authority. Item 1 is the consent docket. Items A and B. Do I have a motion?
So
to
moved.
approve? Do I have a second? Please cast your votes. Item 2 is new business. Do we have any new business? With no new business, item 3 will be adjourned with no new business until August 1st, 2017. I call to order the Bethany Hospital Trust. Item 1 is the consent docket. Items A and B. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your votes. Item 2, do we have any new business?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I was just going to report that we'll have the hospital trust document in front of you at the next meeting. We've had some trouble making connections, but those have been made, and we'll be ready to go on August 1.
I think that's where the document number, the construction,
Yes, sir.
okay. Then Mr. Herron requested.
Item 2, do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until August 1st, 2017. I call to order the Bethany Development Authority. Item 1 is the consent docket A through C. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Please cast your votes. Do we have any new business? With no new business, I declare us adjourned until August 1st, 2017. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.